I wanted to begin. I don't know if you know this, but there's a really funny story about Cary Grant and a telegram. Are you aware of this story?
Yeah.
I know it?
Is that not the fun? I will say it out loud. Do you not know it?
Someone.
I don't
Go
know
on,
if
you
I
tell
know.
it. Go on, you tell it.
Okay, I'll tell it. So someone wanted to find out how old Cary Grant was, and in the old days, telegram, you can only have so many letters.
Yeah.
So he sent a telegram, this I guess is a reporter or someone, and said, "How old, Cary Grant?" ? He replied with, "Old Cary Grant, good. How are you?" Which I think is I'm just going to say to you, that kind of sums him up, his personality. And
Well, he was very witty.
Yeah.
He was very witty and.
Cary Grant, he often signed off on his telegrams to
Did he?
Diane. Yeah.
No, he didn't take acting very seriously, except when he did it. When he took it very seriously, he was very keen to dismiss it. And certainly when he retired, he started doing business. He was very dismissive of how silly and trivial films were generally, and his had been.
Yeah. I thought I would throw a question at you that one of your audience members in the show asked Cary right at the start of the show, which is, how do you create a character and how do you become someone else? Which I thought was like, I'm going to write that down and I'm going to use it. I'm really lazy.
I mean...
Well, Jeff's quite clever.
Yeah, 99% of it is done before we get there because someone's written a really good script. And particularly when they're three-dimensional characters, the actors always get the credit. But it's actually somebody else has given you something that feels a bit like a human being. And then for this one, you do everything. So I spoke to everyone who's alive. Diane was amazingly trusting and open and told me a lot of stuff. Jennifer too. I read all the biographies. I watched all the movies, which weren't very much use because they didn't tell you who he was off camera, which is clearly nothing like he was on camera. And then I searched in vain for any interviews. He didn't give interviews. He didn't want to be recorded because he knew how million miles away he was from his screen persona that he curated so carefully. And I tracked a guy down who had illicitly recorded one of the interviews in the year that he died. And I begged him, and he very graciously, because he'd not played it to anyone, kind of honouring his promise to Cary that he actually said I won't record it, but had. And at that point, I felt like I connected with him, and I understood something about him from listening to the real guy have a real conversation. And then I got on set and threw it all away, because in the end, you're opposite an actress, and you're bringing a story to life about two people who feel things about each other, and you hope that all that work has bubbled up.
Yeah. In terms of the responsibilities, I mean, yours is slightly different because Cary's obviously sadly not with us anymore, but Diane is still with us. In fact, she's here in the vicinity.
Diane is in the other room, watching, sharpening her nails.
How did you find, both of you separately, maybe I'll ask you that first, the kind of process and the kind of differing things where you're playing someone real, but they're not with us anymore, versus someone who is still with us and kind of not looking over your shoulder, but is still part of the process?
Well, in the audition process, I was just watching her religiously and listening to her, and you don't get all the information when you're first auditioning, but I'd heard on a podcast that Jeff Pope had optioned her book, so I managed to find her book, which you couldn't buy in the UK, and read that before I went into the room. And yeah, I was obsessively watching her in interviews because I think obviously that's much more candid. I think Diane's laugh for me was like a big way in. She's got this big, warm laugh, and that sort of summed up her energy for me. So I focused a lot on her voice and her mannerisms. And then, like Jason said, eventually you have to just sort of trust and go with it, that you've kind of got that bit down and try and get the truth of whatever's happening in that scene.
In terms of accents as well, obviously Diane has a very distinctive accent, and Cary did as well, which is that mid-Atlantic kind of accent. In terms of portraying it, what was your way into it? Because obviously you get to kind of be kind of in between. Is that more challenging than just doing an American accent?
Well, what's challenging is that everybody under the sun who does impressions thinks they can do Cary Grant.
Yeah.
That's tough. But what they're really doing is Tony Curtis from Some Like It Hot. And he was doing a really broad parody. And in fact, Cary Grant didn't sound like he did in the movies in candid conversation. But unlike Laura, I couldn't find any interviews. So when I did find that one interview that had been recorded against his will, it was such a blessing. Because first of all, he was much more English. He wanted to be more English. But he'd built that accent based on some actors when he first arrived in Hollywood who he admired and wanted to sound like. So I had that license to not be the Cary Grant that people knew, and I had a brilliant dialect coach. And then you just jump in and hope you're not getting it too wrong.
We both had bits that we would listen to on set, but there was what was that sentence that you played over and over again? Something about a woman.
Yeah. It's on the train. I can't remember now. Don't maybe do it on camera.
Sorry.
I'll do it badly now. No. I did. I repeated the same thing forever.
We were like,
sorry.
Okay.
What's the most surprising thing you learnt about each of your characters or real life people when you do it?
What I learned about Laura?
About Laura or about the people that you play. Because I can imagine when you're playing real people, there's something where you go, I never knew that. And that's a real kind of, even if it doesn't help you, it's kind of a way of connecting with them in some respects.
I think my things were probably things that Diane told me that I can't repeat.
I think she told me some of the same things about Kara.
Yeah.
She was amazingly brave and intimate. The things she told us that are in the performances, if not in the words.
Yeah.
And we told you we'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
You recreate some of his famous scenes in the film. Was there one that you were particularly nervous or excited about? Because there's quite a few gems in his filmography that you get to read.
Well, there were more actually in the original script, and I was
Yeah.
bricking him because oh my god, I'm not an impressionist, but it ended up being just charade and North by Northwest, I think, and he only speaks in charade, and I'm a decent enough mimic. If you give me a short chunk, I can do it. And the suits, my suits were tailored by the greatest tailors in Savile Row, as his were. And I've got the amazing makeup and hair team made me look not like myself at all. Different eyes and chin and hair and all the rest of it. So it felt like a transformation before I'd done any work. So it was easy. If I'd looked like myself, I think I wouldn't have dared to show up.
Yeah, I think it gave us both a lot of confidence that they made us look so much more attractive.
And browner. Much browner.
Much.
Is that a fake tan? Or
Yeah.
did you go
Oh my god, yes.
No,
It's
how often did you
outdoor
have to have
furniture
your
still.
one?
Constantly, I was constantly being painted up and down. Dark brown. I mean, he was a man of
Mahogany.
tremendous extremes. We're laughing, but this was a man in an awful lot of pain a lot of the time, not understanding why he was destroying his marriages. He was heartbroken by it, but he destroyed them. He controlled Diane. He suffocated her with his control, his desire to just avoid the anarchy that has so defined his early abusive life.
Was it nice as well to do, because obviously there's so many biopics now in film versions, whereas in this split over 4 episodes, maybe a little bit more of a deeper dive into things. Do you think that's helpful for you guys as actors, that it's not a 2-hour script, but actually you get to have a bit more time with these guys and kind of play around?
Yeah, I think as well to feel the pain of, like, obviously you have more of a wide span of Cary, but for Diane's story to feel the hurt of all of it, I think it's really important to have the hope at the beginning. So if we had had less time, I don't think...
We had time for a journey. You see,
Yeah.
It's a complicated relationship. It went backwards and forwards, and she's, even when he did some pretty appalling things to her, she still went, okay, that was just, look, he's not perfect, but he does love me, and it's going to work out, and there's space to do that. Where in a film, it's pretty linear, and you don't have long to tell a simple story.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I wish you all the best with the series.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!